To all Iranian patriots, keep protesting, take over your institutions if possible.
The streets of Iran are still filled with people, protests, and the sound of gunfire. In Pumak alone, 200,000 people are chanting, "Return the King." It is claimed that the number of people calling for the Shah in the streets across Iran is approaching 2.5 million. In other words, Iran wants its Shah back. The flag being taken down at the Iranian embassy in London and replaced with a flag featuring lion and sun symbols indicates that the number of Iranian supporters outside is increasing. Of course, there is a reason for all this. Since the protests began in Iran, the death toll has risen dramatically. The true number is not being disclosed due to Tehran's repressive regime. However, according to unofficial sources and reports leaked from the field, sent at the risk of life, the number of protesters killed on the streets of Iran has exceeded 12,000. These reports also claim that more than 10,000 people have been arrested. On January 14th, the regime announced that public executions would begin. Faced with this unbelievable cruelty, it is normal for Iranians to repeat slogans demanding the return of the Shah and rejecting Khamenei. Because this is not a protest, this is not a rehearsal for civil war. This has turned into a total war of annihilation waged by a regime against its own people. What the Tehran regime has done to its people is clear. But is the people backing down in the midst of this massacre? This is where the equation changes. In past years, when the pressure increased, the streets would retreat. But today, the Iranian people have reached the point where they have nothing left to lose. Let's look at the message recorded in English by a masked Iranian youth, looking directly into the camera, which went viral on social media. What does he say? "President Trump, please help us. We will go out again tomorrow, not for paradise or money, but for the return of my father, my mother, my sister, and my brothers. Everyone out there, we love you. We will make sacrifices even if we get 1,000 bullets. Long live Iran." The metaphor of father and the emphasis on Reza Pahlavi in these words also show the ideological shift on the streets. There is no longer a demand for reform, but a direct desire for regime change. At this very point, the exiled leader figure responds to this bloody cry on the ground. Shah Reza Pahlavi. Pahlavi, who had been delivering moderate messages for years, raised his tone to that of a head of state, even a commander-in-chief, as of January 13th. His statement was not just a message of support, but a direct plan of action. What did Pahlavi say? All Iranian embassies and consulates outside Iran belong to the Iranian people. It is time for these buildings to be decorated with Iran's national flag instead of the Islamic Republic's shameful flag. This call is a diplomatic earthquake. Pahlavi aims to take the protests out of the streets of Tehran and into the capitals of the world: London, Paris, Berlin. Pahlavi signals a massive behind-the-scenes deal by saying, "We are not alone. Global help is coming soon." The Shah's statement, "Wait for my next messages," shows that this is not a process but a planned operation. Who is providing the global help Pahlavi refers to? The address is very clear: the US. Messages from Washington are no longer in a "we are concerned" tone. Donald Trump has outlined a very clear vision from the Oval Office. MIGA, that is, Make Iran Great Again. Donald Trump's 2026 strategy for Iran is much more radical than his first term. With this slogan, Trump is trying to consolidate Iranian nationalism with US interests. Trump's implication that government buildings are now legitimate targets, and his immediate follow-up statement that help is on the way, mark a shift in US foreign policy. It's no longer just sanctions. There is now active, tangible support on the ground aimed at overthrowing the regime. So, what does this mean? With 12,000 Iranians losing their lives on the ground, and Pahlavi's bold statements echoing in Washington, will this aid be a military intervention or a much more sophisticated technological war? The US's possible intervention strategies against Iran are rapidly taking shape in Washington's war rooms. Under the MIGA vision, the Trump administration is using a range of tools to overthrow the regime. However, this is progressing with a hybrid warfare approach rather than a traditional invasion. According to U.S. local media sources, the options discussed at national security meetings at the White House cover a wide range, from military force to cyber and psychological operations. The goal is to undermine Tehran from within, empower protesters, and minimize the regime's response. Here are the details of these possible intervention scenarios. First, non-kinetic or soft interventions are at the forefront. Trump's team aims to weaken the regime without triggering direct military conflict. Cyber operations are at the top of the list. According to the options available to the Pentagon, the U.S. Cyber Command could target Iran's communications infrastructure. For example, cyber attacks on the Communications Regulatory Authority, which manages internet blackouts for the regime, could break down the barriers preventing protesters from organizing on social media. Technologies such as Starlink satellites could be deployed to provide Iranians with uninterrupted internet access. This would be a move to strengthen the coordination of protests, with the direct contribution of Elon Musk's SpaceX. Furthermore, as part of information operations, intelligence documents exposing the regime's corruption could be declassified through joint efforts by the CIA and Mossad. This could expose the secret fortunes of the Iranian elite and the inner workings of the apparatus of repression. However, as things heat up, kinetic options are coming to the table. These, which Trump calls very powerful options, could be supported by air power and long-range missiles. The fact that B-1 heavy bomber aircraft have already taken off increases the likelihood of this intervention option. Potential targets include the headquarters of the Iranian National Police and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which are suppressing the protests. Military experts predict that pressure centers such as the Sarala headquarters could be bombed. As a more radical step, Ayatollah Khamenei himself or senior IRGC commanders could be targeted for assassination by drones. Just like the operation carried out against General Qasem Soleimani in 2020. Nuclear facilities may also be on the list. Places like Natanz or Fordo could be hit by coordinated airstrikes with Israel, setting back Iran's nuclear program by years and undermining the regime's economic base. The oil industry stands as a separate option before us. The U.S. Navy's carrier groups in the Persian Gulf could impose a naval blockade to block Iran's oil exports, or even carry out limited missile strikes on refineries. This would dry up the regime's revenue sources, accelerating its internal collapse. The psychological warfare dimension goes beyond Trump's "help is on the way" messages. A new wave of sanctions from the US and EU could target regime figures and the banking sector. It could even isolate Tehran by threatening a 25% tariff on countries doing business with Iran. Regional allies could also get involved. Israel could play a leading role in cyber and intelligence operations, while Gulf countries could provide logistical bases. All of this is consistent with Trump's philosophy of winning. Instead of a direct ground invasion, leave the regime to face its own people. However, the risks are considerable. Iranian retaliation could trigger proxy attacks through Hezbollah or the Houthis. As meetings continue in Washington, this could become a turning point for Iranians on the ground, a mixture of hope and danger. Pahlavi's calls and Trump's signals raise the question, are we on the brink of a revolution? There is, of course, a logical explanation for the emergence of these critical danger factors. The Tehran regime has become so ruthless towards its own people that it denies them internet, landline phones, or any other means of communication. We are faced with a people whose very right to life is being taken away. Faced with this rapprochement between Washington and Pahlavi, the Tehran regime is relying on one thing to hide the deaths of 12,000 people and the blood on the streets from the world: darkness. We are coming to the most critical front of the war, the digital front. The regime has completely cut off the internet, but this time, they are not only facing a people, but also Elon Musk's Starlink satellites and the cyber power of the United States. The Tehran administration is experiencing complete paranoia, with Starlink becoming active in Iranian skies. Reports and videos reaching us show that the regime is literally hunting down Starlink. Special forces are going door to door with signal detection devices, searching people's homes for Starlink terminals. The regime has deployed very powerful electronic warfare systems, believed to be of Russian or Chinese origin, to jam Starlink signals. However, there is a very interesting detail in this technological war. They can seize Starlink terminals, but they cannot stifle the creativity of the Iranian people. Iranian activists and hacker groups are attacking the regime's digital infrastructure, attempting to paralyze the state's communication networks. Pahlavi also called on hackers at this point, ordering them to target the regime's information infrastructure. Consider this. A state that claims to be producing nuclear weapons has become afraid of a small satellite receiver documenting the massacre in Sadeghieh Square. The regime is trying to win the war it lost in the digital world through brute force and deception in the physical world. When we go to the center of events, to the streets, we see that the state has completely lost its legitimacy. One of the most striking examples is ambulances. Those vehicles, which are immune even under international war law, are now Trojan horses in Iran. It is not just a matter of cunning, but also a picture of complete occupation. Footage from Sadeghieh Square, one of Tehran's busiest spots, lays bare the gravity of the situation. Armored vehicles and pickup trucks equipped with heavy machine guns have been deployed to the square. A government that points heavy machine guns at its own citizens in a city square can no longer claim to be a government. People are losing their lives because they are being sprayed with combat weapons, not simple tear gas. This image may be one of the most concrete pieces of evidence confirming the claim that 12,000 Iranians have lost their lives. The Iranian regime is trying to hold on to its dwindling power through these inhumane methods. There is also a geopolitical dimension to this event that is often overlooked, but could upset the global balance. This fire in Iran is not only burning Tehran, its flames are spreading as far as Moscow and Beijing. Russia's war machine in Ukraine has become largely dependent on Iranian-made Shahed drones. Putin may want the regime in Tehran to stay in power even more than Khamenei does. If the regime in Iran changes or military production comes to a halt due to internal turmoil, the Russian army's logistics and ammunition supply on the Ukrainian front could suffer a severe blow. The Kremlin is well aware that losing its friends in Tehran could mean losing on the outskirts of Kiev. Therefore, the allegations that Russian intelligence and advisors are providing technical support to the Iranian regime in suppressing social unrest appear to be not just an empty conspiracy theory, but a strategic necessity. On the other side is China. We are talking about the largest buyer of Iranian oil and the regime's economic sponsor. Beijing does not want to lose its energy security in the Middle East and the key point of the Belt and Road project. However, instability in the streets of Iran creates unpredictable risks in China's energy supply chain. Trump's MIGA strategy targeting Iran is actually a massive move indirectly against China and Russia. By overthrowing or crippling the regime in Iran, the U.S. aims to kill three birds with one stone: liberate Tehran, undermine Russia's arms supplier, and shake China's energy supply. On this grand chessboard, the Iranian people are not pawns. They have risen to the position of queens who can change the fate of the game. However, we have not yet touched on the darkest and most dangerous part of the scenario. Even a cornered cat does not surrender without making its last move. So will a 40-year-old theocratic regime quietly disappear? This is the question keeping experts awake at night. That is, the regime's insanity factor. Historical examples show that regimes losing control internally tend to start a war externally to consolidate the people or distract attention. Could Tehran label the internal uprising as an attack by foreign powers and embark on a reckless military adventure in the Gulf, northern Iraq, or the Azerbaijani border to stir up nationalist sentiments? Or, even more frightening, could it attempt to hold the global economy hostage with a suicidal move like closing the Strait of Hormuz? Left helpless in the face of Trump's and Pahlavi's moves, if the regime acts on the logic of, "If I burn, I'll burn everyone," this could trigger not only a regional conflict, but also a global energy crisis. Right now, it's not just Starlink satellites orbiting in Iran's skies, but also dark clouds of uncertainty. The big question mark on everyone's mind continues to grow. When morning comes, who will control Tehran? Neither the advisors in the White House nor the Ayatollahs in Qom know the answer to this question. The answer is being rewritten every minute by the nameless heroes on the streets. And the world, holding its breath, watches Iran either rise from its ashes or remain engulfed in flames. Do you think the Iranian army will turn its guns on the people or the regime at the critical moment? Could the Khamenei regime resort to the madness of setting the entire region ablaze to cling to power? Share your thoughts in the comments during this historic turning point. To follow developments in real time, learn the truth behind the scenes, and stay informed about our analyses. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and like our video. Stay with Mr. Warlog in pursuit of the truth.